Hi, this is Keith Wymbs, Chief Marketing Officer for Elemental Technologies. Thank you for joining this month's Elemental Insights webcast. We typically do these webcasts in a different format, so we have a new format for you here today. Typically what we'll do is a lot of slides and maybe a demonstration or two of the technology or some of the back-end work. But today we're lucky enough to have a number of panelists here with us in Portland today. And so we're going to eliminate actually all of the slides. I don't think there'll be a single slide for us today. We're going to have a discussion with some industry luminaries, and we're going to switch up the content a little bit too. Typically, we're very focused on technology, and we will do that. But we're also going to spend some time today talking about a little bit about careers and about the paths that these folks took, and really get into some of those types of details that typically aren't talked about in a session at a conference. And we have the ability to do that today because we're actually in the middle of our Elemental Insights Executive Forum. And each of the panelists today was with us last year at our forum. We actually had them present, and as a thank you, or maybe as a consolation prize, we invited them to come back today to have a little bit of a discussion with us about what they think the world's going to be like in 2020 in terms of video infrastructure technology. So really pleased to have them. Obviously, on your panel there, on your console, you do have the ability to ask questions. We have more than 1,000 people signed up for this event, so I don't think we'll be able to get through all of the questions, but we'll do our best to address some of those at the end, maybe the last 20 minutes or so, with questions from the audience. So feel free during the course of the discussion that we have to submit your question, and we'll take a look at it, and we'll do our best to answer it live on the spot, and some of those will be on the spot. Or we'll get back to you if we think it's a particularly relevant question, maybe not just about something specific that's going on with you logging in and whatnot. We will get back to you with that information and make contact with you. So at this point, I'm really pleased to have the three panelists here. I want to just introduce you guys real briefly. We've got Alex Lindsay, founder of Pixel Core. We've got Mark Francisco, who's with the technology and product development team at Comcast. And then we also have Ewan McLeod, VP of Content Platforms at Turner. So a really, really good group here, really diverse group, I would say, in terms of the things that you guys focus on. The first thing I wanted to do was have each of you, I can't really do justice to your backgrounds and kind of what your current responsibilities are. But if you could just talk just a little bit about your background and how you kind of ended up where you are, and what your current responsibilities are, what your kind of interests are even. And then we'll drill down into each of those. So I want to start with Alex, and then we'll go down the line to Mark and Ewan as well. So Alex?
I guess to get here, mine was very meandering. I started as a kid. I started programming graphics and playing with it. I got into radio, then TV, working at Prime Sports Network when it existed back in the day, and then moved into film. Worked at Lucasfilm and Industrial Light and Magic, doing special effects but really, I was really interested in this idea of having everyone, involved in these conversations, and figuring out how to do that. And so, in 2000, started building our own training, and what we had to do was get live streaming out so that we could actually just deliver training to thousands of people that we were training at the time. And in that process, we got kind of good at doing that. And so some of the people that we were training turned out to be our clients, and next thing we knew, that's all we were doing was streaming for them. So it kind of just organically, us trying to fix a problem ended up having us do a lot of it. So what we do now is mostly solve complex live events, usually for large corporate clients, government clients, that type of thing, where they're trying to do something that oftentimes is multi-city, multi-country, multi-continent, and have it all kind of come back together and end up in something that looks like a show on the internet. So that's what we do.
A little different from 2000, a little higher quality now, I assume.
When we did our video, we weren't doing live at 2000, but we were doing, we had to make little flash videos that were flash animations inside of the video because we just couldn't afford the bandwidth. It was that, and I look back at that every once in a while and think, oh my, I'm streaming, we're doing tests in 4K and we're doing all this stuff, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, we'll get into some of the cool stuff that you're getting involved in. So, Mark, how about you?
Sure. So a little bit more linear path. I started in television at a very young age, behind the television in television repair, and then knew I wanted to get more into the development side. So went to college for electrical engineering. Spent my first, tenure of my career as a rocket scientist.
Literally.
Yes, building, tracking telemetry and command systems for weather and communications satellites. So a number of cable TV, defense, and hurricane tracking satellites. In fact, some of them are still flying around up there, fortunately. This is actually decades later.
Congrats.
Thank you. Good work. From there, moved into the first digital cell phone development, which was started as AT&T and a number of company names later. Became Motorola, doing the first CDMA radio systems integration, everything from antennas to the receiver transmitters. And then sort of third phase, and the current one's been going on for quite some time now, is moving that RF microwave systems engineering methodology into cable television, internet, and now the Internet of Things, where I'm spending a lot of time on what I call glass to glass, which is from the capture side of it all the way out to the television and smartphone, whatever screen happens to be in front of you at the time or on your wall, reproduction of it. So there it is in kind of a nutshell.
Very defined environment.
Yes.
Not really. Ewan?
Yeah, so I started off my career deploying wireless networks. I think one of the first jobs was deploying the 5th ever launched GSM network in the world. Then I moved more into mobile internet. So I think in 1999 we launched one of the first WAP sites in the world. So it's maybe a history lesson for some people that, you know, WML was the markup language for mobile web back then. I think the Nokia 7110 was the first cell phone that provided WAP capability. We launched that first. Then I moved from what we would call circuit switched telephony or circuit switched video distribution. Around about 2005, I think, when I came over. I was deploying wireless networks in Europe. Came over to the US 10 years ago to help CNN launch their mobile website. At the same time, we were doing live video telephony using circuit switched networks rather than packet switched. And obviously, at the same time, things like CNN Pipeline were being launched. That was 2005. That's the first live sort of direct to consumer IP video stream. Worked a lot on mobile websites, worked a lot on mobile video. That led me to join Turner, VP of Content Platforms. So for those people who don't know Turner Broadcasting, we own networks in news, sports, and entertainment. Obviously, CNN is a very well-known brand globally. Sports, we've got NBA, PGA, such like, and then we've got a lot of entertainment brands. So at Turner, I'm responsible for all of the video platforms that distribute all of our content out to end consumers. Mm-hmm. So that's it in a nutshell. So very much I started in a sort of mobile internet space, then mobile video, then internet video.
And was Pipeline a PC delivered service
It was PC
offering?
Windows based. It was $295 a month back in 2005. So looking back,
$295?
No, $290. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was 4 live channels. I think it was quite forward-looking back then, and obviously.
Was it taking the linear and putting it?
No, they actually were producing. I think it was about 20 hours of live content per week back then. And they had specific anchors in the studio with the green screen producing most of the content. So, and it's interesting to see how things. I mean, I think the industry goes in waves and troughs or comes around in circles, because back then, you know, WAP was all based on card-based sort of internet delivery, and now we're back.
And now the cards again.
Now we're cards again.
Yeah,
so it's
cards
interesting in saying Pipeline. You know, we're really kind of doing Pipeline again today in many ways, shape, or form. So
interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
So you know, you guys each talked a little bit about your background. Now, since you're closest to me and you just finished talking, you know, was there a mentor or a manager that you had kind of earlier in your career that impacted you, or that you looked up to, or that you kind of wanted to emulate?
Very much so, yeah. So my first job was actually working for a guy who was an entrepreneur. I was the first employee of his company. He didn't even work for his own company. He was feeding his company work because he's working for a big telecom operator. He was a gentleman from Trinidad and Tobago, so he's very mild-mannered, calm, and he basically wanted me to go to business school, so he sent me to business school. He was very much into helping people progress through their careers and learn a lot and become better professionals and things like that. So he was a very encouraging. His name was Patrick Farfan. He unfortunately passed away before he turned 40 with cancer. So he was an amazing gentleman. He certainly helped me through my career. one thing I think the most important thing that he did was he's really good at building teams and finding the right people. And he had some very unique approaches to that. And still today, people don't use some of the approaches like psychometric testing or, culturally fair tests. So even though somebody might have gone to school in a particular country and not had the best education compared to other countries, culturally fair tests would measure your intelligence based on just pure intelligence. So things like that were very interesting back then. But yeah, Patrick Far from probably.
And do you think a lot of that influence came from how closely you worked as the first employee, or was it really all about his?
It was a combination of things. I think obviously I was straight out of university. I was very impressionable, I think, back then. So a lot of things he said, he had a real vision and he believed in his vision. And I think he's one of these people who it was very easy for him to get people to follow him because you could see the authenticity of what he was trying to do. He was trying to create something great and good for the benefit of the company and all the rest of it. So as a young man, 21 years old, straight out of university, it was very you found yourself attracted to that type of work 15 hours a day, but you're going to be really successful in 10 years. And maybe I'm sitting here today partially because of him, obviously.
I mean, you took a bet, right, on a kid out of school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
Okay. How about you, Mark?
So it was my father, was my first mentor, handed me a Weller soldering gun at the age of 12, when they actually were guns as opposed to pencils and other reflow equipment now. I worked in a very small family business that he ran, so you had to do everything. So I really learned the fact that you have to engineer business systems on the fly and understand the workings of everything from the cash register to how the televisions themselves work. And how to, if something needed to be done, you empty the waste paper basket if it needs to be emptied, or you're replacing a cathode ray tube when it needs to be done. The other piece, and the thing that really, I think, formed my level of electronics is the complexity of the television, the elegance of what used to be the NTSC television system. When you think about the color television camera and the Vidicon tube scanning, synchronous with the cathode ray tube in your living room, all a synchronous system through miles and miles of over-the-air broadcasting. Pretty awesome stuff. And how do you fix that when it goes wrong? And all of the pieces that go in there. And maybe I love complexity, and I learned that from dealing with those early audio-video systems, and on into digital delivery of everything from heart rate data from a monitor to high dynamic range television off of some of the cutting-edge monitors and cameras that are out there.
Did you have inklings of that before that gun was in your hand, or was that really the moment where you realized
it's hard to say before 12 if I was conscious or in the modern conscious environment or something like that. I really enjoyed it. I knew that's where I was going. I know a lot of young adults will change their decisions and don't know when they're getting into college what happens, but I knew I loved electronics and engineering, and I wanted to do more than just be in the repair side of it, and I wanted to be in the invention side of it. I have more than a dozen patents now. I consider myself, I guess I am an inventor if you go down that category. And the chance to be able to invent anew all the time as we move into ever more unique platforms with the, we're in like many generations into the information age now. So
12's a lot. That's as many as our whole company. To give you an idea. We got a later start, we're catching up, but 12 is a lot. How about you, Alex?
I was thinking about the question. I don't know if I can pinpoint one person. I look at like my pathway, and I started off. My grandfather, was one of the first ham radio operators in the world. I mean, like licensed or whatever. Picked up the first KDKA broadcast in 1921, and so I grew up with him handing me, here is like 6 years old. Here's a crystal radio set. This is a thing, and you will now learn the Morse code. And like there are things that are required, to be in this family, and so you were just around all of that all the time, and I think that so that was my and then my uncle Sid was the really handed me my first camera, taught me how film works and that process. My father, of course, just taught me to think for yourself, but don't screw it up, which is probably the most important part of doing live production. And then as I got moved forward, there's just been so many people along the line where I just feel like I'm always trying to find someone who knows more than I do. I think it was really important. I think a lot of us started young, and I think that for anyone watching that has kids, I mean, my kids, are kind of flushed with, obviously lots of electronic toys and building, and it's amazing what they can actually do, and watch any kid at 7 years old playing Minecraft, and you realize that school is very simple for them,
Right.
and I think in this industry, I think for me, the person kind of my both mentor and kind of sister in arms is Colleen Henry, who's at Facebook and was at Google, and the two of us, trade notes a lot. So I think that is, and trying to figure out. She's really knee deep in trying to solve very, very big problems, and so the two of us trade a lot of notes.
Okay, so it sounds like one of the common elements that I hear is kind of curiosity, across all three of you.
Well, and I think not only curiosity, but there's so many places where I think all of us, the way we scratch an itch is to create something new. We don't just complain. I don't know. For me, that's the opportunity. Usually, if you're having a problem, what there is to do is find a tool or build a tool that will solve that problem.
Yeah. Okay. So as you guys look at the roles that you have, you're each in a critical role in your companies. Do you look back to specific things that you do or habits that you have that have really impacted your ability to get where you are and to solve the problems, the difficult problems that you're solving? What stands out as something unique to you that really helps you succeed? And I'll ask Mark first, and then maybe.
Sure. The curiosity is definitely spot on. People always laugh at me because I have walked the cable plant end to end many times, literally. I cannot be content understanding just a small part of the system. So everything from getting involved with television production all the way on the creation end to how television works and everything in between, how fiber is spliced, how pull attach is done, how all of the pieces in the APOPs, if you've never been to, the cloud is a physical entity, right? People think of it as this amorphous thing, but you need to visit the cloud. You literally got to visit the cloud. It's racks of servers and storage and all that. To understand what that looks like and feels like and talk to the people who work in that. So I would say it's been a benefit because I lead an advanced technology team at Comcast. And you're not going to do that without some understanding of how these complex systems go together. So I'd say it's probably been a big help to me in my career in being able to have a reasonable level of understanding of the whole end-to-end system.
Mm-hmm. Glass to glass, as you say.
Glass to glass.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, software is the most challenging part for me at this point, but I'm getting more comfortable with that now as well.
That's true of a lot of folks in the industry.
Well, it changes so fast.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at, if you just talk what's the language of the day or the method of the week, right? And even in major ecosystems and how they change. And you look at, Apple went from Objective-C now to Swift, for example, and you look at where C programming has gone and where Ruby on Rails was the hottest thing last year.
Now it's Go.
Yeah, now it's Go, exactly. The rules engines are built on that. It's just where the things go.
It's interesting. We, over time, have, as a software-based solution, we actually will start to qualify customers based on whether or not they kind of get it in that area. Mm-hmm. If they're looking a little bit glassy-eyed, it starts to make us concerned in terms of their capability to deal with our systems. So it's a kind of a psychological qualifier that we note.
I like to say we're getting softer as we age.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Alex?
I think that for me, as running a company that does a lot of this stuff, I think that one thing is make sure that I surround myself with a lot of people that are smarter than I am. If almost everybody, that I, in our upper level, if I don't feel like they know more about what they're doing than I do, then I'm very concerned. Yep. So I have a lot of really great people that make a lot of that stuff work. Everything from logistics to the live streaming, to the infrastructure and so on and so forth. At the same time, echo that I feel like I need to know the whole pipeline, and I think that for me, what's important about that, and I'm always trying to learn more. I mean, every time I'm at an event, one of the luxuries of what we do is that I'm working with a different team all the time, different broadcasters, different event companies, different whatever. And so there's this huge opportunity. Most of what I do nowadays is not actually do the event. I just wander around, chat with people, and figure out how they're doing it and try to find a practice that they're using that I'm not, and so on and so forth. But I think that to figure out how to do the next thing, you have to know how it's all working, because otherwise you can't assimilate it in your head. You need it all in one place at one time, and it's very chaotic, and you don't have to be an expert at it, all of it. But I do think that understanding all of those pipelines is very important, and it's hard. I mean, I think I had the advantage of starting when I was 10. So all of us, and so like I've just been most of my life I've known what a pixel is, and I know how to draw it, that kind of thing. But I think that but it's an overwhelming amount of information. I think it'll be there is no time when I will get caught up. There's just
it's a good feeling in a way.
In a way, you get frustrated though because you're like, I can't, like I don't, I just understood this and now it's all different, But it actually, once you get to a certain point though, I do think it slows down. Like you're adding things onto it. You're not trying to. It's not all new. Everything's a derivative of something else, and so it's just a matter of getting to a point where you can keep on paying attention to it. But there's no time when you can relax. I mean, I don't know. In my opinion, there's always an area that needs to be covered.
Okay, great. Ewan?
Yeah, good point. No time to relax. I think one thing I notice about myself, even though I'm getting on in terms of my career, I guess, is if you're presented with a problem, I cannot rest until we find a solution to that problem. It's like all night, all day.
Tenacity.
Going home on the weekends, trying to figure out, thinking of different ways, researching, trying to be creative, coming up with solutions. And then as an extension of that, you build a team around you, obviously, and you hope that my team certainly have much better skills and knowledge technically than I do, but they tend to have the same tendencies or tenacity. And these guys will go home at the weekend, and even though I maybe criticize them for it sometimes, and I don't want them to be working around the clock, I noticed that a lot of the people who you surround yourself with end up having those types of passion about the industry, about the business, about the technology. I mean, you combine those things together with the rapid movement we always go through. It's just a never-ending wheel that you're running on. That sounds it's very enjoyable, and as Alex said, the versatility or the difference in customers and solutions and challenges you face every day, that could literally drive people into the ground. But I think probably all three of us have the same sort of mentality. We enjoy it.
Yeah,
that's what we
tackle
like.
it.
If we're not getting phoned at whatever time in the morning or asked to fix a problem an hour before the event and you're under extreme stress, we wouldn't enjoy it, I don't think. So that's part of I guess it's kind of like playing in the first division or something like that for a team. It's that's what you enjoy. You enjoy the pressure, you enjoy the challenge, you enjoy being in competition with the biggest and best. Otherwise you wouldn't be showing up every day, I think.
So I want to get a little bit into the technology. I think this relates to it somewhat in terms of, can you just share for the audience a little bit about how you actually use Elemental? Because I think it does relate in some ways to how you select a vendor to tackle those problems, and we've tackled some together over the years, and maybe you could just describe that, and then we'll have Alice go next.
We've obviously been working with Elemental for about 3 years now. Elemental solved a lot of problems for us.
Created some too, or?
No, well, I would say for sure we solved more than we created, that's for sure.
Good point.
So I think, prior to our utilizing Elemental, we had a lot of challenges with using Windows-based operating systems that ran encoders. We had corporate sort of forced updates to Windows, which caused outages in the middle of live events and things like that.
It seems like a problem. Yeah.
So even the first sort of fundamental fact that you were using Linux back then, when most other vendors were using Windows, was a huge positive for us. It made the management and operations and maintenance with those a lot easier. We use Elemental for pretty much all of our live and VOD encoding right now, for all of our sports news and entertainment, obviously. We ran, so for people who aren't familiar with Turner or what products we have, we've got a product called NBA League Pass, for example. There's 30 teams in the NBA, so we can have 15 games per night sometimes. Home and away feeds, 30 games, basically 30 channels streaming out multiple formats. That's ongoing throughout the year. Currently we're in Summer League, but you can imagine the requirements upon a small team to keep that infrastructure up and running. Elemental really helped with that because it was basically more resilient, more robust.
And you guys won an award for that.
We won an award, that's right. We went to Amsterdam last year and picked up the award for innovation. We use all the Elemental products, live, server, Delta. We've tested cloud for March Madness this year. As you know, we did some live encoding in the cloud. I think that's probably going to be the future for.
That's pushing the envelope a little bit.
That's the thing. So, I think there's an inner desire sometimes to be innovative and push the envelope. Just your desire to move forward in the market. Yeah. But honestly, I think at Turner we always have these, because we've got such a broad sort of gamut of content. There's always a need to be doing something different. They want to do this, they want to do that. So we end up having to innovate. And sometimes, obviously, when you're sort of, extremely busy or doing, lots of projects at the same time, somebody asks to do something that's maybe a little bit pushing the edge. Yeah. Sometimes you think, I wish we could kind of just, keep the same stable environment. So obviously CNN is a linear 24/7 channel. And obviously there's narratives or stories throughout the day, and you're obviously following this linear live stream. But at any point with CNN Go, what we've given the consumer the ability to do is control the experience. So if you're watching a particular story on City or whatever, you can basically interact with other content on CNN and go as deep as you want. So well, this is maybe something more in terms of where we are in the industry. So maybe 2 or 3 years ago, what we were trying to do at Turner Broadcasting and the whole industry was trying to take TV content and bring it to the internet. Yeah. So we're taking a video that played out on a linear TV channel, repurposing it basically, repackaging it and sending it out to iPad, iPhone or whatever. Yep. CNN Go, I think, is the first step where we're taking the internet to the TV or the internet to the linear feed. So as you're watching the linear feed, you can basically start using the internet if you want on that device, be it a set-top box or an iPad or iPhone or whatever, and you can basically go as deep as you want. So what the internet gives you is these layers and layers, and you can go as deep or as shallow as you want. So if you want to know, where Siri is, if you don't know, you can obviously find that and then find the history. And obviously the depth of content at CNN gives us that ability, which is unique to CNN. And I don't think there's many organizations in the world that have that depth of content specifically for news or international news. Yeah. So that's very important. So the experience you get basically allows you to control that whilst watching the live video.
I think it's really cool how it actually fuses the live broadcast with things that are relevant, both in a reverse EPG and also of relevant content that can go back, I guess months,
exactly,
years.
Yeah. So one thing, like the thing is with news, there's a rundown for every show. So obviously CNN tends to have 1 hour shows, Anderson Cooper, Wolf Blitzer. I'm sure most people are familiar with it. But whilst the rundown is actually happening, it's actually live you can actually see what's coming up next. And if you join the show halfway through and the first story was on whatever, Donald Trump, you can actually click on it and go immediately back to Donald Trump, almost like a DVR window. And everything's time synchronized, which was a bit of a challenge in the early days because obviously each transition from one show to the other and each block of the show is all very much synchronized with the experience you get. So if we're talking about Syria, there's enhanced content or related content displayed based on that article or that story. Yeah. So obviously, very easy for you to interact in that. So CNN Go is quite impressive if you can download it.
Sorry about the demo.
No problem.
It sounded very muted here, but obviously on the signal itself, it has audio. So, Alex, how about you in terms of giving a little context for how you're using Elemental and how maybe that's evolved over time as your business has gotten to more and more scale and higher profile? Yeah, I guess you started out pretty high profile though in terms of the events you do.
Yeah. I have to admit that in the early days, I'm kind of surprised anyone let us, stream for them. We were doing it for ourselves and we were doing it for them, and we were using, this typical things you'd start with, and we had really had failures after failures after failures of not. So when I say failure, the event went well. But there were lots of things like, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. We survived only because we had lots of redundancy, and I was like, we were pulling our hair out. And finally, got our first, couple Elemental lives. And right now, what we've been doing is mostly doing that, and a lot, we have a lot of them at this point. We have some of them that are, in our facility in DC, and then we have a lot of them that float around. A lot of our clients still want to, encode on site. So we will bring them in for that for a variety of reasons, and so a lot of our clients are doing multi-channel. So a lot of them are events. And events and they'll want to be covering those events and running 3 or 4 channels. Either for most of the day or 24 hours or whatever. One of the things that I think that number one is obviously we enjoy the stability and the quality of what we're getting, but I think also the ability to easily administrate, all of our elementals, globally. There's only a handful of senior, encoding engineers that we have, and we can't put them everywhere. I mean, we're doing, 1 or 2 events a week somewhere, and so.
And sometimes really remote.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our stuff is, it's everything from, we have, in Rwanda, we have a team there that does a lot of streaming for the president's office, and then also a lot of East Africa, but we streamed from every continent except for Antarctica. So, and.
Let's do it.
We're working on. We brought them in on a stream, and let me tell you, the bandwidth is really bad. But I think that what's great for us is that someone hooks hooks the computer in and into our network, and we immediately, we see it, we can administrate it, we can run the event as if we were there, and there's not any thought process to you don't think about it at all, and we're moving, a lot of times we're using many live units at one time to do lots of different streams at the same time, and just being able to open up all those windows and make it work, and then have an API to extend things if we need to, has been, that's how we're moving towards, a lot of customization, within how we interact with the app, taking advantage of stuff that isn't necessarily exposed, but is exposed in the API.
Sure.
And but we're looking at then moving towards some limited CDN, abilities, very small, nothing big, but providing. That'll be our next step, is providing either specific in-country location. There's some things in Africa, for instance, where you have a ton of bandwidth in the country, but not a lot going out of the country. So how do we solve, those kinds of problems, or how do we solve? For us, a lot of it's solving rural African problems with encoding. So, but those are also one of the big things that we're also seeing a lot of is managing encodes within a location. So rather than, a lot of times we think about going out to the internet, but oftentimes you have something like, a big golf tournament or a large conference, and you want everyone to be able to see video, because we're really moving to a point where everything is going to be streamed. But you want to be able to see it while you're there, but having all those people actually watching it, over an internet connection would be painful. Just be, and so figuring out ways to solve that problem is something that we're spending a lot of time on.
Do you see in some of the bandwidth constrained maybe countries and infrastructures, do you see HEVC playing a role eventually, or
it may?
Will the endpoints be there in that type of environment?
Yeah, I think that right now, I think it could. I think that right now, that platform is really good for contribution. It's, that's what we're using, that's what we're looking at using it for a lot of things. I think it provides a very high quality stream. I think that right now it just isn't being supported in the same levels yet.
Yeah.
I think that they're really, if it doesn't work on YouTube or Facebook, in Africa, that's all that. those are the two places everyone watches their videos, and so so those are the two places that need to get cracked for it to be really big in those areas.
And Mark, I don't want to put you on the spot because I know you're in the R&D area. But whatever you're able to share is fine. And obviously, we've done a number of announcements with Comcast over the years in terms of our support for Xfinity and the X1 platform we announced in March with Comcast. But whatever you're able to share without getting you into too much.
Not too much trouble.
Hot water.
I promise not to go there. So Elemental has been a big catalyst for innovation for me. I would say my job is to make others look good by making it easy for them to implement the latest generation technology. In as much, I always keep a couple Elemental encoders on the side for little pet projects. And those have included, nowadays, it's high dynamic range video encoding. Comcast has had HEVC on plant for over 2 years now, and in production for a year for Ultra HD. So Ultra HD is kind of old hat now. That, at least for VOD, and the latest frontier, of course, is linear. We've done a number of test broadcasts as recent as the Women's World Cup tournament. We broadcast in Ultra HD, P60 sports content, the HEVC using Elemental encoding, and continue to use the platform as a method to look after the most advanced encoding as well as other dimensions of video, including audio. by the way.
Yeah,
right?
can't forget about audio.
Yeah, you got higher order Masonics and 3D audio, and where the next generation of broadcasting with ATSC3 coming online in the next couple of years, you want to think about that as well. Now, more in the nuts and bolts side of things, Elemental is the engine in Comcast Unified Workflow, and that's the ability to take in a single high-quality mezzanine source, and those specs are publicly available, to be able to generate all those adaptive variants for television to small screen. And that's the engine that runs, and we're trending. It's interesting, you have to look at our position where we have to process over 10,000 unique linear channels in the plant, and increasing those all distribute over IP to every size screen. But now trending over 100,000 assets in the on-demand platform on every screen, and could be as many as 8 different bit rates, 2 different audio codecs, possibly multiple packages, MPEG-Dash, HLS, and Flash, and also all of the different variants on DRMs for them. So it's been the core of that effort and continues to scale upward and upward, now moving from on-demand towards a complete linear adaptive delivery. So transition of us and perhaps others in the industry, for sure, we're in the midst of a complete replication of our services in IP, both multicast, unicast to every screen.
Yeah. So complex.
Cool stuff.
And it changes how often?
Well, yeah, and interesting enough, I mean, we're just, MPEG, if you're involved with that at all, is already looking at what's beyond HEVC. Like, wow, we're just getting comfortable with HEVC, but you got to keep looking forward.
It keeps going. So you mentioned HDR, and I do see a couple of questions coming in from the audience on HDR. I'm going to ask the audience, I'm going to do a polling question on HDR for the audience to get a level of understanding, see where they're at from a knowledge standpoint. But maybe if you guys could comment, and I don't know if you're involved in HDR, kind of looking at HDR at all. I don't want you guys to name who the winner is going to be. I'm going to ask the audience who they think it might be. So I'm not going to put you guys on the spot, but just some of the characteristics, and then we'll go back to the poll and see. So the poll question that I'm asking the audience is, based on your current understanding of potential HDR implementations, which do you think has the best likelihood to succeed? And I haven't listed them all. I have the BBC's version, Dolby, SMPTE, other vendor solutions, so a bucket of other, which could include Philips and Technicolor and whatnot. And then the last one is, I have no idea, please help me learn more. So that's
How much time do we have?
Yeah. So if you guys
that's like the Betamax versus VHS question, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
So, yeah. Well, I can tell you, we're planning on doing an HDR event very soon. I don't know if I'm allowed to say which one, but it's going to be soon, major sporting event. And I think the winner for us will be whichever cameras are used and how the actual event broadcaster will choose that equipment.
What the source is.
Yeah, exactly. So then we're kind of we can only obviously encode what we get, as they say. So yeah,
And this is pretty far out?
No, within the next 4 weeks.
It's pretty soon, and you still don't know.
We don't know because we don't know exactly right now. We've had some sources, but they haven't actually chosen the vendor, I guess, or the person who's going to be doing the event. So yeah, so that's the thing. So again, when you talk about the dynamicism of the industry or what we have to do on a daily basis, we have to react really quickly to these things because it might be one format or one type versus another. So we basically just have to handle all of it. And that's a problem for you as a vendor, because sometimes we're calling up and saying, oh, we're using this, and can you support it? And of course, you might say, well, it's on our roadmap, and we say, well, we need it for next X weeks because we've got this major event, and obviously you'd like to support us, and we get into that cycle as we do every single probably month or week with these things. So yeah, no, I can't answer. I think it's too early to tell. And again, it's going to be other. I think it's going to be external factors that influence that in ways we don't understand, maybe. And rather than just pure technology, which ones,
Yeah, I was asked by a media person last week, what my opinion was, and I said, well, 4 weeks ago I would have had a different opinion, but now I don't have one anymore. It changes all the time. How about you in just terms of what you're looking for in an HDR solution
Yeah,
overall?
sure. And just a word, there's a couple of industry organizations that have been put together, the Ultra HD Alliance and the Ultra HD Forum. We participate in the forum because it's focused on the workflow of HDR. Again, this glass-to-glass philosophy. It's all those interop points from the camera or the computer creation through to the television delivery, encoding, and where we put the electro-optic transfer functions, AOTFs. That's where a lot of the discussion has been. When you get into the science of HDR, first of all, HDR is dynamite on screens both large and small, and resolutions both high and low. So it's got a lot of legs. It involves new televisions and new workflows and maybe a bunch of new standards that are under development. So that's where the complexity, maybe that's why I love it, right? It's all the complexity side of things. So here you have something that benefits both the creative storytelling population, right? It's all about the storytelling, as well as just the overall consumer experience. It certainly benefits consumer electronics companies because they sell new devices and get to market new features. And it may have some lasting quality. So we have to ask questions about what happens in the content creation side, and then in the mastering and distribution, and then finally decode side. And there's places in insert technologies and all of that. Where a lot of these various proponents of different methods come in is you have to consider some of the realities of, it's a live sporting event, for example. Gee, is that simulcasting in high dynamic range and standard dynamic range, or is there a way to derive one from the other? And we don't know yet. I suspect, well, already there is on-demand HDR content available, at least through one pairing of supplier and television manufacturer, and many more to follow. This will play out in the store shelves and whatnot for some time yet. That said, in the meanwhile, we're doing work to try and understand how to make decisions on these various technologies. Okay. From bandwidth efficiency, which looks to be pretty darn good, impact on client-side devices. At the end of the day, you've got to decode this stuff, and we're talking 10 bits or more, and single or multi-layer decodes that need to be synchronized, and all that stuff is, I mean, this is the fun part of it right now. And then finally getting a space that encourages the content producers to be able to create and finish content in these formats that they see benefit, both from advertising returns to return on investment because of the revenue they get from X, Y, and Z parts of the content. It's all coming together at once. Right?
Okay, let's look at the results, and then I want to go to Alex to talk even. So this is, I mean, HDR full adoption is probably out a number of years. It's going to evolve over time, and then we'll talk out even further, but let's look at the poll results, and we'll push these out to the audience. We've had a number of responses, and it looks like the lack of knowledge wins.
Looks like the next webcast.
It's over. Yeah, I think we did figure out our next webcast is over 50% say, "I don't know, help me."
Sure. Awesome.
And then of the true choices that we had, the first three, the BBC, Dolby Vision, as well as the SMPTE specification. It looks like Dolby Vision and SMPTE, the power of brand and the power of standardization are winning out. Sense. It may be a little bit more of a domestic audience, so the BBC is a little bit lighter there. But it's more than 50% saying I don't know, come help me. That's an interesting response, I think.
Like to get there.
But Alex, can you talk? We're just getting into augmented reality. We were talking about it a little bit last night, virtual reality types of environments. And you guys are experimenting in this area. And I know you can't share everything, but
we're doing some live streaming to Gear VR and Oculus. Those are the two that we've done the live streaming work with, and that's actually a big push for 4K or even more.
Oh yeah.
Because the problem really is that as you look at a 4K stream, that's minimum. That's a minimum because you have to remember that of course you have you're putting your goggles on and you're only looking at a small subset of the entire. So HD, a 1080p stream is nothing. It's horrible to look at. And so that's like first generation. The other problem you get into is now when you move to 3D, I'm now giving you two of those. So you're really looking at there's somewhere in the next couple of years where we have to be streaming. We already know that we have to be streaming 8K. minimum for a 3D experience, inside these goggles. So I think that resolution is going to get driven. We're kind of, already starting to save our ducats for what we have to buy to make that work. So yeah, but 4K has been the minimum. I think the live VR is very compelling in certain areas. It's very challenging right now. We really feel like we're in kind of the bleeding edge right now because it kind of works. You can't say that I couldn't run, a professional basketball game, in that yet.
A little bit slower motion kind of environment.
Well, it's mostly just getting all the pieces of software to work because they're all still, that all is still kind of working its way out. The streaming part is actually the easy part, from our perspective. I mean, other than needing a lot of horsepower, that's a known issue. The stitching part of, grabbing a bunch of cameras, and right now that whole technology is going to evolve very, very quickly as well. Right now we're cobbling together GoPros or Reds or other cameras, and you've got seams, and you have to figure out how you're going to manage that, and you've got and then the other side of it is, from a production perspective, is you can't hide. So you put that thing down, and there's we're sitting, we're hitting and talking to you. There's lights, there's things, and
there's a small area underneath.
Exactly.
Is there duct tape in this at all?
There's always duct tape.
Okay.
Well, not duct tape. Gaff tape. Yeah, gaff tape. Get
the lingo.
But I think that area, both in production and in streaming, is going to be a very interesting. Those headsets are going to start shipping in mass early next year.
Yeah, right.
And so we're really happy that we get the opportunity to play with it right now and to figure out what's working, because not just from and the technology will change, but even thinking about how to tell a story or how to cover sports, it changes completely, when you're able to stand there next to the players.
Great. So I do want to make sure that we have time for questions. So I'm gonna do one more final wrap up, and then I'm gonna try to do my magic of sorting through the 50 or so questions, and I do have some help doing that, but hopefully we'll be able to do that. What do you guys feel in terms of what's still to come? I mean, if you look at, first of all, ourselves and how we consume content, and maybe even more importantly, our kids and how they do it, right? I mean, a lot of times I've heard in households, like, being forced to watch something on the TV is actually punishment, taking it away from that kind of one-on-one experience. That's kind of a scary proposition. For folks that are involved in more traditional, as well as the new, and how do we manage that? What do you guys see in terms of, just managing the transition that's going on? And one question that I have for you as well, related to that, is, there have been a number of content owners that are basically saying, I'm moving away from the bundle. I'm going to do some direct work. Obviously, even within Comcast, there's MSNBC Shift, which does not require a TV everywhere authentication, and is that a real trend? What are you seeing? And I know you can't disclose everything.
Yeah, I mean, the TV industry is extremely healthy. It's obviously hugely profitable, huge industry. People are generally maintaining that type of audience. It's dropping slightly, obviously, but we're really growing a market on that direct to digital. Time Warner, which owns Turner Broadcasting, also owns HBO. HBO have got the product, HBO Now, which is direct to consumer. Obviously, that's going to be a trend that you'll see other brands following. I think it depends on what type of content and how many networks you own. Obviously, we've got a very small number of networks. It's easier for us to get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 channels to that market, whereas some companies own lots of smaller networks. I think it's going to be challenging, maybe to get that amount of direct consumer for each small channel or each brand. Unbundling that might be challenging for them. In terms of trends, I mean, there is HDR content available to the public today. I think Amazon were first to launch. I think the show's Red Oaks, which is a great name for HDR content, obviously. Orange Oaks or Red Oaks, of course. I think a lot of people have actually been really impressed with that. The public, the general consumer doesn't understand it yet, I don't think. But when they see it and experience it on an HDR, device, I think they get it really quickly. So of course we're going to see a lot of that. A couple of days ago, I think there was some 8K, 60p streaming an MLB game with NHK or something. So that was into the corporate suite, which to me is quite baffling, to be honest. Yeah. If I go to a game, I'd rather watch the live action rather than sit in a room with an 8K stream watching it like as real as possible.
Yep,
Which
yep.
is interesting, but I guess each to their own, as they say. And in terms of my consumption, for sure, I mean, so back in 2008, when the iPhone came out, obviously didn't support live streaming. I set up a company to do live streaming. When I did that, a lot of people said, nobody's going to watch live sports on a mobile phone. And that was the comment, or news. And now it's like everyone wants to watch everything everywhere, which is the name of a company in the UK, obviously, a telecom,
Yep.
wireless company, great name, everything everywhere, because it's true. Everybody wants to watch everything everywhere, and it's almost ridiculous sounding in a way. But as we move forward, the world is going to be full of screens. They're going to be everywhere. Hopefully, those screens will react to what you want rather than pushing stuff to you, and things will be a two-way conversation rather than a one-way push. But in a nutshell, you're going to see a lot more, I think, direct consumer plays, so people can actually purchase what they want rather than bundles of things they may not necessarily need.
And there's actually a question from somebody in the audience kind of related to this, so I wanted to bring it up. It says, do you think that by 2020, sports and other high concurrency events will be delivered by IP on massive scale almost exclusively? Are we at that point where we've gotten to scale? Like, what's the largest type of scale that you've been involved in that you can rough estimate?
Well, March Madness was a big event.
Yeah.
I think it was about 1.5 million concurrent viewers, which is huge. I mean, that's one of the biggest. I mean, the World Cup was probably soccer men's World Cup was probably one of the biggest. Mm-hmm. I would imagine that was in the 3 or 4 million concurrent for IP, but it's still very challenging, because you're relying upon the public internet. You're relying upon third-party ISPs. Even though you might use a CDN, there are lots of scale challenges, and that's why things like HEVC and more efficient ways of... Basically, there's always going to be a limit on the pipe, and there's always going to be people wanting to push more higher quality through that pipe. Mm-hmm. So I think, obviously Akamai just purchased Octoshape, which is a throughput optimization, forward error correction, type of distribution, to make it more scalable, I would say. So I think we're going to have to solve that problem. Like Akamai, yes, they solve the problem today, but as you start pushing out higher definition, more devices, more consumers all over the world, obviously there's huge growth going to be in Africa and other developing countries for sure. Over the next, I don't know how many years, it's not too long before we'll be 10 billion people on this planet. So each person's going to have a device, and each person's going to want video. So the scale of IP is a challenge that needs to be solved for sure. So,
and we have customers. Actually, Xbox Live uses in a single event up to 8 different CDNs to deliver globally. Now, I think that's an extreme example. I assume that in most cases you're using 2 or 3.
Well, that's the thing. So sometimes you overcomplicate the problem you're trying to solve, because sometimes using multiple CDNs is more of a problem than it solves. Yeah. Because switching traffic and offloading one CDN to another. So if you distribute the load, that can sometimes help. But that's a whole discussion in itself, how you utilize multiple CDNs and what the benefits and disbenefits are. Okay. Yeah.
But IP exists in the center already for everything.
Yeah.
So in Comcast cable plant, every channel is IP at some point in its delivery. Now it's growing out towards the edges. So it's a question of, emphatically, yes, it's going to be all IP, live sports, the whole bit. The remaining 2 pieces are the production truck, which is still traditionally an SDI or a 3G SDI infrastructure, and that's moving towards IP.
Sure.
I think that's very realistic that it would be there, and that's a key to moving to next-gen formats. I think of the complexity of sports and an 18-camera production or something like that. And then the last mile, which is IP at least to personal devices, with the advent of more multicast-friendly networks and much more video-friendly internet delivery protocols, and that's probably one of the key areas for development, because we're still really adapting video like it's a web page. Mm-hmm. And I agree, the reasons for that allows you to commoditize the web server, the video pumps, and all of that type of stuff. But there's a lot
being more video aware in that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's topics like buffer bloat, but even more adaptive streaming methods that are much more dynamic and efficient, and stacking efficiency and then multicast efficiencies are the way we're going to get there.
There's a question here about patent pools for HEVC, and I know this is at a lower level, but do you see that as the split between?
I think it's really important for those patent pools to sort their stuff out, because I think that they do have, that is one of the biggest, in my opinion, one of the biggest issues right now with it. It is a very promising platform that the business guys are jerking it around. And the problem is there are other formats, that are when you look at other two of the largest distribution of video is you look at YouTube, you look at those types of things, and they're using other things.
Yeah.
And the thing is that a reason for that, a big reason for that, is those patent pools. And I think that if that group doesn't figure this out soon, they may end up with a much smaller piece of they may end up getting more money, but from a much smaller piece of the pie than they would have gotten if they had just made it easy and simple and not oppressive.
Yeah. Alex, I had a question for you. There are customers or viewers on here that are, asking about us to define software based solutions. And obviously we productized initially as an appliance. And I know you guys have used both our GPU and I believe also some of the CPU. Have you seen differences other than typical performance ones, or
in the early days,
do you buy a standard kind of product, or do you use various flavors of us?
We use both. So we buy both GPU and CPU. There are we've definitely we've seen little things here and there that are different between the two. In the early days, there were some stuff where the CPU was actually a little bit more stable. Those things have been kind of ironed out.
Yeah.
Where it was less sensitive to changing signals and stuff like that than the GPU units. But for us, I mean, it's the CPU units for us are for on-site tend to be really great because they're very, very quiet and they're very small, and we can. The GPU units tend to be what we tend to refer to as jet engines. And so
the power's there.
yeah, exactly. You can feel it. So I think I think for us, one of the things we liked a lot about the smaller units that we've gotten is the ability to have a small case. I mean, literally, we can bring two elementals, into a country and carry on,
Right.
if we need to, and
Yeah.
that is
On the
very
plane. Yeah.
on the plane, and there's a lot of good reasons for that sometimes, and so that is great, we do like the beefier machines as well. We like one of the things that the very smallest units only have a single, when people are starting encoding. It seems like, you only need a single input, and that's really you very quickly realize why you want 2, 3, 4 SDI inputs to manage things. So, but I think we're really happy with both the last generation and the current generation that just was released. We have a little bit of all of them.
Okay, great. And I know you guys have used both.
We've got a lot of CPU for one reason, because we had commodity hardware, I would call it, that we'd purchased for another vendor. They used a different capture card. It was a Windows-based system. We found much better resiliency, uptime, much more efficiencies, not only organizationally, but in terms of, delivering the outputs.
So you were able to reuse
We basically
the physical assets.
Yeah, so we basically
of the
wiped
farm.
them out, loaded on, CentOS, bought some new capture cards, and I think they were like, $1,000 a pop back when we bought them, and then got software from you guys. So we basically replaced a lot of other vendors and used our CPU, and the performance is obviously not as good as the GPU stuff.
Sure.
But and again, we do 3 different types of events. We do linear 24/7 live streaming. We do scheduled events like NBA League games or PGA PGA Championships, so they're scheduled. And then we've got all these ad hoc events that pop up, and they're kind of like on demand. So anytime, somebody in sports can set up a press release or a press conference, and they basically, again, we use the API. We've got a console, and they can start and stop a live stream. And that basically goes to a pool of CPU encoders, because it's only, we can control how the router or the channel goes through that infrastructure. And it's basically on-demand infrastructure. And I think that's the first step towards, virtualized live streaming. And we have for MML. For MML, for example, for that particular project we did, we were using CPU on-site encoders to take in an SDI feed to send it to the cloud to utilize that infrastructure. So again, I think there's.
And that cloud application was a live process that was spun up.
Live, yeah. So it was ingesting.
cloud.
It was ingesting RTMP, I believe, for that event. Obviously, you can ingest HLS as well. Obviously, we're looking at using reliable UDP or whatever, to get out to that. That's something we're trying. That's the problem we're trying to solve right now. How to take, it depends where the source is. If you're an event and it's in Idaho for NCA skiing or whatever, obviously an on-site encoder might be the best thing. If you have a studio where you're producing the content, having an encoder on site there is probably better. And how you utilize the cloud then depends how you can connect the infrastructure. And again, you're reliant upon third parties generally.
And were you using that just because it was a one-time event where it spiked up and
It was
dropped down?
exactly.
And
We didn't
it's just
want
variable demand that you want to
exactly.
satisfy.
So and that's what we're getting into. You know, we're going to move to more fixed infrastructure, more compression-based. You know, broadcast type of, you know, 24/7 streaming, and then all the on-demand stuff will be more sort of scalable in terms of how we develop that infrastructure.
Great.
So,
Great.
Yeah.
So we're at the top of the hour. I'm not going to ask you guys for final comments or anything like that, because that always puts people on the spot. But I do want to thank you guys for doing this, taking a little more than an hour of your time to come in and visit us here and go through some of the things that we see happening in the future, and sharing a little bit too in terms of more the personal side. It was definitely interesting to hear where folks have come from and who influenced them and whatnot. And I want to thank the audience as well for taking the hour and for all your questions. Again, we weren't able to get to all of them. I tried to ingest as many as I could along the way. This webcast will be available for archive towards the end of the day. And so you can watch it again if you happen to miss any of it, and take some notes, and hopefully you learned a lot from the session. We thank you for your time, and we'll see you at our next Elemental Insights webcast.